afternoon, evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm George Moss again here at allpointstv.com. We're doing a special program today on Saturday, the 25th, and it'll be airing at some point on Channel 17. I am very elated to have a special guest today that we've had in the studio before, a man who has written about the Constitution, and we're very glad to have him to come in and talk about one of the topics that we discuss in our regular programming on Justin Amash, and we'll have that as our basis of the conversation. But we'll be going into some things, hopefully, about the Constitution and the impeachment process, and hopefully you'll learn something in the course of this program that is scheduled to last for an hour. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I want to thank Jonathan for coming in and sharing this hour with us here at the studio.
No, my pleasure, George. Glad to be here.
And I'm very glad to have you here, too. I said last week when I was discussing Jonathan Amash, Justin Amash, I was saying that he has broken ranks with the Republican Party, the first member of the Republican Party in the House that has joined on to the Democrats who are seemingly situating themselves to call for the impeachment of this president, which was something that was announced even before he took office. And this idea of impeaching 45 is ongoing as a conversation, and we have the first person who broke rank and has joined in with that voice. I don't think there's any impeachable offenses that have been committed, but I'm here to discuss that with you, Jonathan, and I hope to hear your point of view on that.
No problem.
So what do you think about the call for the president's impeachment and this Republican member?
Well, first, let's be clear, okay? I'm going to read right off from, this is the tweet from Amash that set the whole firestorm going a week ago. He said, and this is after reading the Mueller Report, which, as he said in a later tweet, almost no one in Congress has actually bothered to do yet. Surprise. But he says, here are my principal conclusions. 1, Attorney General Barr has deliberately misrepresented Mueller's report. 2, President Trump has engaged in impeachable conduct. 3, partisanship has eroded our system of checks and balances. And 4, few members of Congress have read the report. See, now, everyone's focusing on statement number 2 there, that Trump has engaged in impeachable conduct. Okay, you can say that I'm just arguing semantics if you want, but that's not calling for impeachment. He is giving you his short version summary of what he gleaned from reading the Mueller report. He says there are impeachable things there, but he's not going around saying we must impeach the president, which is what pretty much everyone on the Democratic side of the House has been doing. Now, even if he were to say that, the question still remains, what are Justin's reasons versus what are Tlaib's reasons? What are, what's her name out of Minnesota, you know what I mean? You can have 5 people who all call for impeachment of the president, but do so for different reasons, and those reasons are what matter. I can almost guarantee you almost any Democrat that's calling for impeachment also hasn't read the Mueller report. They just hate Trump.
Or understand the Constitution, because when I hear someone saying that the president has engaged in impeachable conduct, my question is, what does that mean, since in the impeachment process there is no conduct that is listed? The Constitution is talking about the condition that it takes to remove the president, which is the use of the impeachment process to bring about the removal. But the impeachment process itself as a process, there's nothing specifically laid out as to what is an impeachable offense. And the reason for that is, I think you will agree, is because the impeachment process is a political process and is not a legal process.
I'd say it's kind of both, but it is largely political. But impeachment is all about conduct. You want to impeach so that you can remove, and you do that based on you don't think that the person is upholding what they should be doing for their office. So that's why the language just says high crimes and misdemeanors. It's a very broad scope. I mean, ultimately, the bar for impeachment is quite low, and it's more opinion-based than anything else. But it's still opinion of facts. I mean, you don't want to. I like to compare it to what the recall law was here in Michigan before Snyder tweaked it. Okay, you seriously could put paperwork to recall someone based on I don't like. You can't say I don't like because that's personal judgment. It's I want to recall so and so for wearing a blue hat that day. It's stupid, but it's factual. It's not opinion based, and that becomes grounds for a recall. Impeachment is honestly the same. So what it comes down to is, what is your rationale for filing articles of impeachment, and is that something other members of the House can actually support? For what reason, etc. So that's what I'm saying. It's very. If Amash were to file articles himself, which honestly I don't think he's going to do, he's literally just saying, "Look, I've read the Mueller Report. This is my take on it from having read it, end of story." But if he were to file articles himself, I can guarantee you it would read differently than if someone like Pelosi had filed them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he said that, and when I hear them say that the president has committed impeachable offenses, my question is, do they understand the Constitution? Because in the places where the process is laid out in Article 1, Section 2, Clause 5, where the impeachment takes place in the House, and then, of course, the trial is in the Senate, which is spelled out in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 6. It does not say what the impeachment itself is a process, what the charges have to be in order to bring that process about.
That's why it's so open, yeah.
So, and we can talk about why that is open, but it is a political process in the sense that the punishment for having risen to the level of what's required for removal in Article 2, Section 4, what's required is treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors to be, in fact, specifically charged with that and then convicted of in the Senate. The point is that if it were a legal process and then a conviction based upon the legality, then it would not say in Article 1, Section 3, Clause 7 that the punishment for the removal does not extend beyond that removal. There's nothing there that would bring about any legal ramifications.
Exactly. It's all impeachment and removal is strictly about conduct in office and whether that person's going to remain there. Nothing else to do with
political consequence.
Exactly.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with anything legal outside of that.
Yeah, and I don't think that Justin Amash understands that. When they start saying that he's done impeachable offenses, the first question raised in my mind when I hear that is there are no listed impeachable offenses. It just requires a majority vote in the House.
No. Impeachable offenses is purely interpretive. When you say someone has committed impeachable offenses, what you're really saying is that in your view, they have done something against proper conduct for which they could be impeached. And I do disagree with you, George, though.
Okay, sure.
Justin does understand the significance you laid out because he has a law degree from the University of Michigan. I guarantee you he knows exactly what you mean. He is sticking to rule of law and upholding his oath to the Constitution. He's giving no favor to any person or party whatsoever. He's saying, look, my job is to uphold the Constitution. Here's where we are with this. Here's how I understand it, period.
I'm not so sure that is what Justin is doing. I have a problem with someone calling for the impeachment of a president for a bogus charge against the president in terms of the investigation. The Mueller investigation was on collusion.
And this is where things get complicated, though. He's not saying president should be impeached because collusion. It's not about that. I mean, because I get the concern. I do, because I agree that the whole Steele dossier, complete fabricated BS, all politically motivated, and yet, because of who held what position when, it still generated an investigation, which still dragged on forever, and wound up throwing a few people out of their jobs along the way, but then ultimately did what? Okay? And if you read the rest of Representative Amash's Twitter feed, you'll see he's speaking to the conduct of the president, his office, and his administration during the course of the investigation. It's nothing to do with what they were investigating. It's to what extent he did or didn't interfere with the investigation itself, which is separate from whatever they were investigating. They could be investigating the literally stupidest thing in the world. You still don't interfere with the investigation. That's the problem.
The president gave them 1.2 to 1.5 million documents. He allowed his surrogates to go there where he did not use executive privilege to suborn their testimony, allowed his attorney to testify. He testified for 30 hours. This is a witch hunt, and they're saying the president interfered with a witch hunt, but where is the interference if in fact the president was cooperating, and at the end...
But that's the tricky part, though. You know what you know and what's been available to the public. What you don't have is the full Mueller report. Amash has and has read the full Mueller report. And I can literally sum this up with the following 3 tweets from him. Okay?
Good.
1. Contrary to Barr's portrayal, Mueller's report reveals that President Trump engaged in specific actions and a pattern of behavior that meet the threshold for impeachment. In fact, Mueller's report identifies multiple examples of conduct satisfying all the elements of obstruction of justice, and undoubtedly any person who is not the President of the United States would be indicted based on such evidence. Impeachment, which is a special form of indictment, does not even require probable cause that a crime, ergo obstruction of justice, has been committed. It simply requires a finding that an official has engaged in careless, abusive, corrupt, or otherwise dishonorable conduct.
Let's go each one of those at a time so we can take them one at a time. Read the first one again.
Yeah.
I want
Contrary to Barr's portrayal, Mueller's report reveals that President Trump engaged in specific actions and a pattern of behavior that meet the threshold for impeachment.
What threshold is he talking about? That we said earlier that the Constitution does not lay out any conditions for impeachment. It only requires in the document that you have a majority vote in the House, and in order to bring about the conviction on the charge of impeachment, it takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate. Yeah. That's why I was saying when I hear people like that, that say that it rises to the level of impeachment, there is no level.
There is no written standard, and that's why that's what his.
So he's talking outside the Constitution.
His tweet 2 messages later spells out that impeachment simply requires a finding that an official has engaged in careless, abusive, corrupt, or otherwise dishonorable conduct.
No, it doesn't require
all of that. That is all opinion based.
It does not require that. It requires the Constitution. You can begin to do what Justin Amash does in terms of speaking extra constitutional. But he's not speaking from the document itself.
Oh, no, I agree with you on that, because the document itself does not say that.
That's why I object to the language these persons are using. It's not just Justin Amash. It's also other persons that don't understand the Constitution and the restricted language that it in fact has. You can't tell me about the implication of the language. The specific language lays out very clearly what it takes to bring about impeachment and the conviction of the charge. It does not lay out it only lays the process out. It does not talk about what the parameters of the charges must be. It does not do that. And so when they start saying that it reaches the level of impeachment, then they are confusing the American people as if there's something that is specifically laid out in language that says these are the conditions for the impeachment.
Well,
and it does not do that.
One, it's not hard to confuse the American people because the majority of them have never read the Constitution either. Okay, let's face it.
But you and I have read it. So.
Now, when it comes to the impeachment, no, it doesn't spell out impeachment only if X, Y, Z. You're right. But it has a very broad statement there of high crimes and misdemeanors. And that is strictly... But removal is predicated on impeachment. Basically, it's like he says, impeachment is a certain type. It's the equivalent of an indictment in a legal setting. Impeachment is when the grand jury indicts you, and then the Senate removal trial is when you're actually getting prosecuted and possibly removed. All they're saying is, okay, what qualifies for this indictment? The Constitution spells that in broad terms, not very specific ones. And interpretive-wise, yes, here's how we've taken it for years and come down. Keep in mind, okay, only 2 presidents have even been impeached. in the history of the whole country so far.
Right.
And neither was actually removed by the Senate. Now, in Andrew Johnson's case, hey, I mean, they fought it out. It was close. There you go. In Bill Clinton's case, it was a purely political move to save him in the Senate. End of story. So it's just, see, where I have trouble here is I understand why a lot of people would be jumping to Trump's defense and harping all over Amash about this stuff, okay? But the majority of people who do it are speaking from a purely partisan bias of, how dare you go against the president? How dare you go against the party? It's like, okay, do you not understand that when you're sitting here trying to defend the president based purely on which party he belongs to, without even knowing the specifics of the report, that's the equivalent of back in the 90s when Democrats said, hey, it's just sex, so we shouldn't be impeaching Clinton. Wasn't about the sex. It was about what he did in office, and it's a different thing entirely.
I would condemn the president if he had been involved in something that was obstruction of justice, but to make the claim of obstruction when the president was cooperating with the investigation, although the investigation itself was bogus, I'm not trying to defend the president. I'm trying to defend the Constitution, and I think that Justin Amash, whom you have stated understands the document because he came from, you said Columbia University?
No, University of Michigan. Actually.
University of Michigan? Okay. Yeah. Whatever university he came from. I am not particularly impressed with these persons who are supposed to be the heavyweights of the Constitution. I've heard Alan Dershowitz, I've heard Napolitano, and I've heard Lawrence Triad, who is a professor of law at Harvard University, and I found all of them wanting in their interpretation of this document.
Well, I can agree with you to an extent because I rarely agree with Dershowitz, and I don't know that I've ever actually agreed with Lawrence Tribe about a damn thing. But you got to remember though the real sticking point to this. Amash has read. I mean, you keep saying that Trump cooperated, to the extent that Trump cooperated, but you are not privy to every specific thing that happened. You don't know what Mueller knows. You don't know what's actually in the report. So from your point of view, with your limited knowledge, I get what you're saying. All I'm saying is Amash has read the full report. He's got a lot of information you don't have.
He has not said anything in his statement about the impeachment, certainly the first one we read here, does not indicate non-cooperation of this president with the investigation. This obstruction, they're claiming, I want some evidence of it. I don't want him to give me his opinion of it. That's number one.
But that's the trick, though, about what he is allowed to divulge publicly or not. This is where we get into. This is why so much of the report was redacted, because there are certain securities.
2% of it, and the only thing,
the most important 2% probably.
I read most of the report. I'll tell you this: the redaction is what you have to. Mueller was writing a report for the eyes of the Attorney General. To release it to the public, you have to, in fact, and this is what he did, Bob did, he redacted 2% of the report. We can understand the report without the redactions, because all you're redacting are the persons that are not part of any of the indictments that were brought in. You don't want those names disclosed. You don't want to uncover the processes that were used. That would be something that you want to keep on the wraps. And you don't want to have grand jury testimony placed in the public domain, because that's supposed to be kept secret.
Yeah.
Those things are redacted. In terms of what the report claims, I think Bob did a very good job in terms of itemizing what the report has in the summation. I don't think he mischaracterized that, and I think that's why Mueller is reluctant to go before the investigative bodies, because he is not going to give them what they want, and that is they want him to come in there and say that the report was misapplied by Barr, and the report was not misapplied by Barr. What Barr did was, in fact, summarize the report, and we have nothing on the record by Mueller saying the report was inaccurately summarized by the Attorney General, who I think is a very honorable man. And I think the fear is we're getting ready to do something that we really should have done at the beginning, and that is to investigate these investigators. Because this whole scam, this was a scam. Jonathan, do you agree with me on the that the Mueller investigation was a scam run on the American people?
Oh yeah, there didn't need to be an investigation other than to satisfy whiny people who wouldn't shut up. Okay? Because everything was predicated on a dossier which was later shown to be purely fabricated. So ultimately the investigation should have just ended there. But that's not what happened.
The president is being accused of obstructing justice for defending himself. The president was simply defending himself against a bogus
But this is where details and particulars
made by his
matter.
political enemies that wanted this man out of office because they could not defeat him and did not defeat him on November the 8th, 2016.
Regardless of why there was an investigation, you still have to conduct yourself within certain parameters. Now,
I agree on that.
You're insisting ultimately that he did.
Yes.
However, and again, I have no reason to distrust Representative Amash on this. Okay, I've known him to be nothing but forthright and to the letter in his entire career. I mean, so here's another tweet for you.
Let me stop right there.
Yeah.
I do not agree that Justin Amash is an honorable representative who has handled himself with honor as a member of the House of Representatives. I think he's one of those persons in there that did not do what 39 others did in the House in 2018, where they delivered this body to the Democrats who didn't take it from the Republicans. They gave it to them. 39 people stepped down. Justin Amash did not step down. He stayed in there, but he's a Trump basher. He never supported this president, and he's one of those persons inside of the body doing the same thing that I see Romney doing.
But you're assuming political motivations.
Yes, I am assuming political motivations.
And all I'm telling you is based on what I know of Justin and how much I know about him personally. None of this is political. I can see why it reads that way to someone who is more politically inclined. I understand that. I'm just saying that's not where he's coming from, even though that is 99.99% of our government anymore. That is not where he's coming from on this.
And he's a purist in this corrupt body, but Justin Amash is a Puritan inside of this corrupt structure, and he's acting honestly and without political intent, and that's why he singularly was the Republican that took the position he took. I read Justin Amash's record as a member of the House, and he's been obstinate to the Republican Party ever since he arrived there, and he is the lone person out on most of the issues that party stands for, and I see him as the same opportunist that you be in this county. If you're running for office here, you got to run as a Democrat. You know, you can't be elected in this county here as a Republican. In the third district, which came out of District 5 until 1991 or 93, somewhere around there. That is a conservative district, and if you want to run in that district, you have to run as a conservative. I have not seen anything in his record that indicates that he is a conservative member of the.
How do you define conservative?
Someone that wants to conserve the integrity of the Constitution, which Justin has not done that.
No, that is literally all he's done.
I don't see any evidence of it. I see him talking out of both sides of his mouth. When he says, for example, that the president must come before the Congress to get the Congress to agree with him on building the wall, for example, this man is not allowing the president to do his job as the enforcer of the law. We have laws in the book. He doesn't see the president enforcing the laws of the country. He sees them as suborning the integrity of the legislative branch, which is how you talk out of one side of your mouth that you really want to maintain the Constitution. Well, the Constitution tells the president to enforce the laws. He is for these open borders, as is the case with these others, but using the underlying tone.
I disagree entirely.
I see that consistently in his record.
His position regarding the wall. I mean, by saying the president has to come to the House, that's about the funding. That's not even about the particulars of the wall and whether or not you want it. It's that all funding originates in the House. The president just can't declare, we need the money, end of story. No, this is why he has to work with the legislative branch to get the funding for the things he wants, because the House still controls the purse.
The House controls the purse. I'm not saying that's not true. I'm saying that what Justin Amash does is that he uses this wiggle room that he can move into to claim a constitutional basis for his opposition to this president. He has never, in fact, taken positions that to support the fact that the president has to enforce the laws and therefore these other things must occur. He's never argued that. He's only argued the president is overstepping his reach by, in fact, not allowing the House, which is non-cooperative, to not give him the funds to build the wall. But he does not talk about the other side of it.
But there's no need to. I mean, ultimately, what you're trying to say is, here's the part where he says that the president is trying to operate outside the Constitution, and Amash is saying, no, you have to do it this way. And meanwhile, there's places where the president is operating within the Constitution. So you're saying, why isn't Justin speaking up and saying, thank you, Mr. President, for doing that?
Yeah.
Why should he? His job is to uphold the law. If the president is within the law over here, then there's nothing to be said there. You have to worry about this one over here.
Here's why I say he's talking out both sides of his mouth. Why doesn't Justin say that the president has to enforce the immigration laws of the country, and therefore the House should do its job in terms of making sure the funds are available for him to carry out his constitutional responsibilities?
Except you've got that in circles, though. Yes, it's up to the president to enforce the laws as written. But that does not come with automatically getting money for things, especially building new things.
How can you keep these immigrants out if they are coming across our borders that are very porous? That's why I say in reading his record, and I read his record. I really have paid attention to, particularly when this man came out and called for impeachment of this president.
Again, didn't call for impeachment, just said he's done impeachable conduct.
I should be more specific in my language. I don't mean that he's actually put the particulars in place to do that. I'm saying that what he did was he gave the cover for those that want to impeach this president on the Democratic side, and he's the first one to, in fact, side with that position in terms of the president ought to be impeacted, saying that
But you're still looking at it from a purely partisan perspective, and that's the problem, George.
He said I'm not looking at it from a partisan point of view. I'm saying that this language they use, that he's actually created impeachable offenses. That's offensive to me. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that there are specific things that you can do, that if you do those things, those are impeachable offenses. It doesn't say that. It only requires a majority vote in the House and a 2/3 vote in the Senate. You're
talking about the function, not the terms, though, and that's the difference.
His language is wrong. His language is incorrect. There are no. I'm telling you the absolute truth here. When I hear these politicians talk about, and this confused the American people, they talk about the president has committed impeachable offenses. I tell them to show me that. I asked Trav to do that in a post that I did on his nonsense. There is no impeachable offenses in the Constitution. You're talking about using the process of impeachment for the conviction of the president, where there are specific things that must occur in order to convict the president and remove him from office. That's not the process. That's why when I do my program Monday, I'm going to be teaching how to read the Constitution. And I will tell them that the issue of how to read it is location, location, location. What these so-called scholars don't understand, and I'm going to teach them this because they don't understand it, is that you have to look at location. The process of impeachment, Tribe, and you others out there, is in Article 1. You understand that? In Article 2 is to use the process that's spelled out in Article 1 to then bring about if the removal is in Article 2. If the treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors was the impeachment process basis, it would have been in Article 1 where the process is. It's not in Article 1. It's in Article 2, where it says that the president, vice president, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office upon impeachment for, that's in Article 1, and conviction of treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors. That's the use of the process to remove the president. But you don't have to remove the president through the impeachment process. It's only a charge that is politically made in the House of Representatives. It's not a legal charge.
Well, actually, the president, until the 25th Amendment happened, impeachment was the only way to remove the president.
through the conviction on treason and bribing other high crimes and misdemeanors.
But that's because there is no trial in the Senate without first having impeachment in the House.
True.
But as you pointed out, in Article 2, it spells out, here are the things for which you should try and remove him. Including in there is the broad, vague language of high crimes, misdemeanors.
For removal.
Yes.
Not for impeachment.
Okay, I see the technical argument you're making, but here's the thing.
I'm challenging these
If
scholars.
these are the specific things strictly for removal and not for impeachment, then what are the grounds for impeachment? It's. I go back to the whole recall thing I mentioned earlier. Then it becomes a matter of where impeachment is whatever the hell you want to file it about.
I have to tell the viewer, I love Jonathan because Jonathan's a thinker, and I'm glad, I love talking to him because this man is a scholar, and I respect that, Jonathan.
No, thank you, George. I appreciate it.
You are a scholar, but I'm challenging these other scholars out here that are making these statements, like Justin Amash, who I don't think understand the gravity of what they're saying. When he starts saying things, as Justin Amash said, that these are grounds. These are.
But you're drawing a very, very particular linguistic distinction, is what you're doing, though. I understand what you're saying, but you can also see how that's like this kind of a B. Other people are seeing it like this. And you're like, no, it's down here. You know what I mean? Okay, I get what you're saying.
Okay, so what does? So he's done obstruction of justice. Did he specifically state where the obstruction was?
Well, see, and that part of that comes down to two things. One, you got first. We don't have time for me to read every damn tweet that he has on here.
Give me an example. Give me the short version.
Well, I mean, okay, putting here, because he even goes at one point, starts putting things in numeric statements again, okay?
Okay.
And in fact, he's stating the position of the opposition who disagrees with him. He says, one, they say there were no underlying crimes. In fact, there were many crimes revealed by the investigation, some of which were charged, some of which were not, but are nonetheless described in Mueller's report. Two, they say obstruction of justice requires an underlying crime. In fact, obstruction does not require prosecution of an underlying crime, and there's a logical reason for that. Prosecutors might not charge a crime precisely because obstruction of justice denied them timely access to evidence that could lead to a prosecution. They're saying it's hard to make the specific charge if obstruction happened that prevented you from getting what you needed to make that charge. It's a very convoluted legal mess, ultimately.
Here's what Justin Amash does not get, is that what Mueller's report does in terms of the obstruction aspect of his 448 page, I think it was, report, is that he lays out the possibility the president would have obstructed in these 10 areas. He does not draw a conclusion saying that there was not sufficient evidence to show the obstruction, so he doesn't draw the conclusion. He never thought, of course I know what he was doing, the motivation was to place in the hands of the House, which is now controlled by the Democrats, so as to bring the political charge against the president. Legally, he knew that it did not meet the standard of the legal charge being made. But he did not draw a conclusion. He simply made the reference to the possibility. Barr comes behind him, reads the report, and draws the conclusion for Mueller. And now what Mueller can do, if Mueller wants to stand on his report and say that what Barr did is inappropriate and wrong, all this do before the public is come there and say that the conclusion that Barr made is incorrect based upon the 400 and some odd pages report that was submitted to the Attorney General's office. Let him say that, as a matter of fact. Because if he does that, then the question comes up then, if that conclusion is now being drawn, then why didn't Mueller do it in his report? He didn't draw the conclusion. He only tried to lead the House to do the continuation of the investigation.
The point of the report was literally to spell out what happened, not to himself draw a conclusion of now you must X. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
No, but it sounds to me, like what you're saying is, it would be one thing if Mueller himself came out and said, no, Barr got it all wrong, which is ultimately what Amash did. What you're saying is you'd give more credence to that claim if it came from Mueller than if it came from Amash or anyone else.
I would say even more than that. I would say that Barr dares not do that. That's why he wants to go behind closed doors. Because if Barr comes out and say that the conclusion that was drawn from the report is wrong, then it raises a question then, and it shows the politics in terms of what Mueller was doing. It raises the question of then, if the conclusion can be drawn from the evidence, and he disagrees with Barr's conclusion, then the question comes automatically is why then Mueller make that conclusion himself based upon the same report. You see, he's boxed in.
But that's just it, though. It wasn't
politics is now.
It wasn't Mueller's job to draw the conclusion. It was literally just to gather and spell out the information. Period. And I promise you, depending on the mentality and point of view of a person, 5 people could read this report and can come out with very different endgame results from it.
Such as Justin Amash, because Amash comes out and says he read the report, and he talks about the president having been involved in obstruction of justice. That report does not show that. It shows that Mueller was saying that there was some indication of that, not sufficient evidence to draw the conclusion of that, or he would have drawn it, wouldn't he? Why does Amash look at the same?
But that's where it's a different matter of what is political impeachment versus actual legal indictment.
Right. I agree with you on that.
Appearance of obstruction amounts to being obstruction in a political realm. It's a whole different thing from a legal standard, though.
Mr. Amash, let me tell you something. You cannot claim obstruction of justice when there's nothing on the record other than cooperation. The president sent his team without one executive order privilege being asserted by this president, and he sent them down there without any restriction on their testimony. That's cooperation. The 2,800 persons, the 2,800 witnesses that you had before your committee, the 40-some-odd members of the FBI, the 19 members of your team, Mueller, of your team, could not find any conclusive evidence this president was involved in collusion, the charge for which the president was supposed to be investigated for, and there was nothing that showed obstruction. You did not show it in your report, and if it's not shown in the report, then Justin Amash cannot come behind that report, which is now out in the public, and say that the conclusion that he draws from that information is more certain than the fact that you wrote the report and you did not draw the conclusion. And that's why I say that Justin Amash is hiding his hand behind the American public, acting like he's acting constitutionally, where if he were acting constitutionally, he would call for Mueller's report to be dismissed, because that report was bogus based upon the claim that was made, and the evidence in the report does not show any of the things that they're now trying to claim this president was involved in. He wasn't involved in collusion, and he wasn't involved in obstruction. If he were involved in that, I would not be up here. I'm not defending the president. I'm defending the Constitution, which you claim Justin Amash is defending. He's not defending the Constitution.
Well, that's just a matter of personal interpretation, though. You're saying you're upholding the Constitution, and here's how you read the report, end of story. Amash is saying he's defending the Constitution, and this is how he read the report. Now, if the two of you want to sit down and have a discussion, that's a whole nother thing.
Bring him in here.
I mean, I can't. I do not speak for him. I'm only giving you what I know that he has stated publicly. I mean, in regard to the last thing you said, again, I will reread. In fact, obstruction does not require prosecution of an underlying crime. And there's a logical reason. Prosecutors might not charge a crime because obstruction prevented it. He goes on to say, if an underlying crime were required, then prosecutors could charge obstruction of justice only if it were unsuccessful in completely obstructing the investigation. You see where there's a circular mess at play here. He's saying simply, from a political conduct point of view, there is enough to say you weren't completely straightforward in how you were involved in this investigation. You're saying otherwise. I wasn't there. I don't know everything that Justin knows. I don't know everything that you know. So it's a difference of opinion. But the one thing that I must take exception to is the claim to politically align him with anyone else who's even mentioned impeachment on a matter of partisan politics. You got to keep in mind here, and this is what drives me nuts about how people reacted to his initial tweet. Okay, you have people who then, you can't say that about the president, and then the second thing they said, well, what has Amash even done? He's no conservative. Okay, that has nothing to do with anything. That's over here. And then they start going about how many bills has he passed through? It's like, you claim to be a conservative, and now you're judging him based on how many new laws he created?
I'm with you, Jonathan. I'm with you on that.
You're the most legitimate critic I've heard, George. Everyone else is just God knows where, man.
Yeah,
I still disagree with you.
Yeah, sure. That's why I respect you, because you're a person that understands and speaks to the issue, and that's commendable. I'm not this person out here trying to defend this president. What I'm raising here is the claim that's being made by these people that are speaking about a document that I am convinced, based upon what I'm hearing them say in public, that they don't understand. I don't think they understand it when they start saying things like Justin Amash did, that this rises to the level of impeachment. If he had said this, I would say, okay, he's on the right track. If he said this rises to the level of the president being charged, you see, with treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, I would be with him on that, because then we have the basis for him specifically pointing out what the president should be charged with based upon the Constitution. But when they start telling me about there's some constitutional standard for the impeachment process, I'm going to call them on that, because they're speaking outside of the context of the Constitution, because there's nothing laid out in Article 1, which is where the process is laid out, that will in fact say that these are the things right here that bring about impeachment. We're not talking about bringing about impeachment in Article 2. We're talking about if impeachment is used to remove the president, then you have to have these specific allegations that are made. Here's what my real argument with these people is that they were talking about impeaching this president as soon as the election results were known. I heard some of these other gangsters in the Congress.
That's a whole new problem,
I know,
though.
But I'm saying that it's part of that whole thing that he is now agreeing with. They wanted to impeach 45
except
for having won the election. And he's joined on to that noise.
You can have two people who both actually call for impeachment, but if they're doing it based on different terms, it's not the same thing.
I don't see we disagree on that, because I think what you have here is Justin Amash hiding his disdain for this president underneath I'm putting motive here, underneath the
I understand.
Underneath his call for it, based upon he's such a constitutionalist in his own mind, his legend's own mind, and he wants to make sure he maintains the integrity of the Constitution.
But see, what you're doing is you're alleging and suspecting motive without knowing it. That's a problem.
I'm saying that if he were in fact a person upholding the Constitution, then he would in fact say that the president has not obstructed justice by the Mueller Report, which is not in that report where there is any evidence.
He says it was, though, and this is where he disagrees with you.
Let him quote what part of the Mueller report alleges that. Mueller did not make a conclusion on that. There's no conclusion in that report that Mueller made.
And no one said the conclusion had to be there.
He made the conclusion then. If Mueller didn't make it,
this is his take from having read the report.
Now we're talking. He draws the conclusion. It was not drawn by Mueller.
No.
So he's saying he looked at the same evidence.
He read it and drew a conclusion, and his conclusion differs from that of the Attorney General.
He does.
Mueller never had a conclusion.
Yeah.
Mueller just threw stuff together.
But understand what we're saying here. We're saying that the Amash, who was not on that team, he was not privy to the 2,800 witnesses. He did not have 40.
He just has the report.
He has the report, right?
That went into it.
And then if he has the report on lesser evidence than those that made the report, and he draws a conclusion that they could not make, I'm saying that the conclusion that he drew is therefore political because of people. Okay, why would that not be a political conclusion?
The only ones that have all the information beyond just the report itself are Mueller and the team who created the report. Okay, Barr doesn't have that. The president doesn't have that. So I get what you're saying. All we have to work with is what's in the report. His analysis of the report differs from Barr's, which differs to a degree from yours. I understand that line you're drawing between impeach, conviction. I get what you're saying. That's just not how things are commonly referred to within governmental circles.
Right.
So yeah, I'm willing to meet you partway on the semantic difference there.
Okay. Well,
but the intent, you're still assuming and alleging motive on the part of Amash.
I am.
And it's just not there.
I'm saying that we got two people that have read the report. Barr read the report, and it's alleged that Justin Amash has read the report. They read the same report. One doesn't draw a conclusion about obstruction. I should say, Mueller didn't draw a conclusion about obstruction. But two persons that were outside of the committee read the report and drew
let me give you this, though,
different
George,
conclusions.
Okay? Justin Amash, William Barr. Which one of these two can be fired tomorrow by Donald Trump?
I'm not saying. Well, okay, fine. Okay,
that's incentive for Barr to give a conclusion favorable to the president.
So Barr draws a conclusion favorable to the president that we can all read behind him to see if the conclusion he drew can be sustained by what the document says. And he's out there illegitimately making a claim that's not in the report. I simply want those who disagree with Barr's conclusion, and Amash is one of the ones that disagree. I want Justin Amash to show me in the report where the particulars of the claim would be different than what Barr stated. I think, in other words, if you're going to challenge the integrity of the Attorney General, who has a record of integrity more so than some of these other persons that have held that office. I'm talking about some names in particular.
Holder.
Particularly Holder. That if you're claiming that there was, as they're claiming, he's a president's lawyer rather than being the Attorney General of the United States, if that claim is in fact made, they need then to bring about some specific allegation about where the report is different in terms of his representation of it and what Mueller actually,
and I get what you're saying.
Brought out.
And
so
if I knew everything line by line,
where is that? Where is that difference in terms of your interpretation of it being different than Barr? What did you read in the report that Barr did not read? I'd like to see him spell that out where Barr was wrong by his conclusion, that Barr made the wrong conclusion based upon this particular part of the document. And I don't, and I dare Amash to do that because I think Amash is acting politically.
It's not about saying what Barr didn't read. I'm saying that it's entirely possible that Barr read the whole same report and still gave a specific result favorable to the president despite what's in the report. All I'm asking for you, okay? Be fair down the line here. Do not assume motive on the part of Amash when you do not have it.
Yeah,
you are assuming and alleging when it is not there.
I want to say to Amash this: you would those persons that agree with you are saying that the Attorney General made a report that is supportive of the president. You made a conclusion in the report, reading the same report that Barr read, as it is in support of the Democratic Party. And someone...
Wrong. He's reading it in support of the rule of law. Just because the end term of impeachment is something shared with the Democrats is not the same thing. You show me one Democrat in the House who has first off read the damn report, secondly, who spells out what their terms for... They don't have terms for impeachment. They want to impeach Trump based on things he did before he was even president.
Sure.
That's a whole different ballgame.
And Amash has joined that camp.
Wrong. It is not partisan. It's nothing. Again, you can have 5 people wanting impeachment for 5 different reasons. Amash is at least basing it on conduct in office, whether you agree with him or not, whereas the Democrats over here are on a whole different planet. That is not the same thing. It is just, I promise you, someone brings any kind of articles of impeachment in the House, unless it's terms with which Justin personally agrees, aka like what he spelled out in his reading of the Mueller Report, he will not support it. You can't. It's not as simple as, well, you want to remove him, I want to remove him, so I'll go with the one you said. No, he has more personal integrity than that. Again, I'm asking you to give benefit of the doubt. Do not assume an alleged motive And do not lump him in politically, partisanly, because that's just a whole derailment of the entire thing.
I see too many examples in Amash's case where he takes a position outside of the Republican Party, and
But that's strictly partisan.
But
he takes it because the rest of the party is wrong.
But I'm not saying they're right. I'm saying how he encases his opposition to it. For example, in the Affordable Care Act, he'll say that the reason why he is in fact against the Republican Party seeking to repeal and replace is because they don't have this particular thing in place, and therefore it would abdicate something that we have in place, and we don't know with certainty what we put in this place. Or he'll say, for example, that he is not for the abortion reform that some of the persons are pushing because after 8 weeks because of some other excuse that he makes. I'm saying he always couches his opposition.
But it's not excuses. He cares about the details. See, a lot of these times when people put forward these different bills and we want to do this, we want to get rid of that, they write them so broadly, so badly, appealing purely for political. I mean, okay, let's go back. I don't remember how many years ago this was, but I'll give you an example, okay?
All right.
There was something that was written purely to strip away federal funding from Planned Parenthood, okay? Now, I definitely agree with the motive. That, I mean, why the hell was there ever federal funding of Planned Parenthood in the first place?
Thank you.
However, and this is what got me, because Justin did not support that bill. Why? Because the way it was written, it wasn't a standard of law and funding. It was written to where it couldn't apply to anything other than Planned Parenthood. It was literally using law as a specific attack on a specific organization. Had it been written differently in terms where it would have applied to more than just Planned Parenthood, you would actually have a standard of law. Yeah. But that's not what it was.
I'll tell you what, see, I read that also in his opposition and his stated reason for it. If you are against, they say abortion, they say women's choice and all that, when you are against murder, then whatever restrains that act, that horrid act, is that you have to side on the side of life. Our documents requires it. We have in our Declaration of Independence, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, number one, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Anything then that sides on the side of life is on the side of the documents that are the founding documents of this nation. And so what I see him doing continuously is that he goes in and denies that he's supporting it based upon these circumstances, but it's on some other circumstance in which he tries to legitimate why he is in fact voting against these other things that would be the conservative position. He claims he's conservative. He's libertarian. But if you're libertarian, you have to side for life to the extent that the document allows whatever you're trying to pass does that. And he consistently does that. Out of one side of his mouth, he's on this side of it. But the reason why...
Not true.
I see
George.
Repeatedly in his I don't see the principles
I get where you're coming from. But
I read his record.
You have to look at the particular... Again, look at that specific case regarding the Planned Parenthood funding, okay? You don't use law as a cudgel to attack your enemies. Remember what Obama and Holder did using the IRS to attack conservative groups. That's exactly what shouldn't happen. Okay, and this actually, I can bring this around full circle and relate it to impeachment.
Okay.
If you either lower the bar for impeachment to attack someone you hate or raise it to protect someone you like, you have to be concerned about the next time. Let's look at it in terms of the U.S. Senate and the quote-unquote nuclear option. If you're gonna play around and change the rules, you better know what the hell could happen next. What is the fallout going to be? And Justin is concerned about rule of law first and foremost, and not using things for your own little... Even when the objective is correct, the methodology still has to match up.
Okay, where we basically disagree is in terms of Justin Amash is that you see him as with a purity in the House of Representatives, and I see him as being politically ambitious. Do you see him as being politically ambitious?
If he had political ambition, he would have left the U.S. House by now.
He's running. There is this part of his behavior that's now being alleged to be in his position himself to be the Libertarian candidate in 2020. You don't see him running.
That's people coming to him and speculating and wanting that. I give you a less than 1% likelihood that happens.
Okay, and I'll bring you back.
Because he's not an idiot. That would be the biggest fool's errand in the world.
I'm going to be very surprised. We definitely can see this in the future then, because we'll have to come back and talk about it.
Justin is many things, but Don Quixote is not one of them.
I don't see Justin anyone else in that body, and that's in the Democratic side and the Republican side. And I've criticized both parties. I think both of them are incompetent, they are inept, and they're corrupt. And if he is in there as a non-corrupting influence in that body, and he was elected first of all in 2011. And he's been in there 8 years, he's still there, then I don't see him as being in there, being the only one in the barrel where he has not been spoiled by the corruption inside that body. He's a Puritan standing above it. He's a politician, just like the rest of them are.
This is a case where I would genuinely use the term statesman. He is not a politician.
There are no statesmen.
You are reading too much politics into it.
No, I just don't think you have statesmen in our government. You have these.
We've got one.
One out of 535. He stands out.
And there's your problem. It was just the same as when we had Ron Paul in there. He was going to sit there voting no on all kinds of things. The most principled person, despite what everyone else did. I mean, because let's put it this way: we
won't argue about Ron Paul.
Well, I'm just saying
because I want to say that the statement that you had when they compared this one politician to Kennedy, when the guy said so and so, you are no John F. Kennedy. Well, he's no Ron Paul. Sure, Ron Paul was standing outside of the process and was a stickler for following the Constitution. I don't see that in Justin. I'm just sorry, I don't see it in what he's doing.
And I just think you're misinterpreting him. That's all.
I wish I had brought his record here because I would.
But here's
read it from.
Well, no, because I understand there are plenty of quote right-wing, quote conservative groups. Or, well, Justin, you should have done this. And to me, it's the kind of thing where like you put forward a bill that says we're going to fund the schools. Okay, well, how are you going to fund the schools? By taxing everyone's income 50%. I would vote against that, right?
Right.
And how would it get painted by the people who supported that bill? Oh, apparently I hate schools and I hate children. That's the problem with our system. Method matters before outcome does.
We got to wrap up real quickly here, but let me ask you before we go off the air. Are you for the sanctity of life in terms of are you for or against the abortion?
I will put it in terms of two things. I am personally opposed to abortion, period. Flat out.
All right.
But from a governmental, legal, holy crap, when you look at the mess we've made for 40 plus years, every attempt to address it is just making a bigger mess. Okay. Everything.
And my criticism of Justin Amash is that if you are pro-life, then any bill, no matter how far it goes or what is left out of it, if you're pro-life, any bill that protects the sanctity of life, you have to be for that bill.
When the methodology is off.
And I see that's his wiggle room.
Again, methodology matters.
Okay, well, we are going to pick this up another time. I always enjoy Jonathan coming in, and you're a brave man.
Glad to do it.
And I really appreciate you coming in because you are a man that has tremendous integrity, and I want to commend you for.
And if we can set up a phone call between you and Justin, I would love to do it.
Have him call that number.
Hey, Representative Amash, any of your staff, 810-250-7365. Let's see what we can do, okay?
Yeah, I look forward to it. Okay, I want to thank Jonathan again for coming in, and we've had a very lively conversation here. Nobody went to blows, and want you to tune in on Monday as we begin to talk about some other things here regarding the Constitution and the impeachment process. Want you to always follow your dream. If you don't follow your dream, you'll never know what's on the other side of the rainbow.